Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I'm Celtic Templar, and welcome back to another Fantasy Friday. Now, it's been a while since we've done this, y'all, but I decided, you know what? I've seen Shad from Shadiversity do a video on the swords of Middle-earth, and I decided, you know what, I gotta do something just like that, but I wanted y'all to choose, and y'all chose armor, of all things, in which there's a lot of, and such. Now, we will be covering mostly from the films, but I will give some honorable mentions to some historical armor and equipment, and I will pretty much say of how much I would rate this equipment and what I would rather have seen with it, or as well, some of the equipment that some of this armor was inspired by and what it reminds me of. Now, the first honorable mention we should get into is nothing other than that of the dragon helm. Now, if none of y'all have ever seen read the books, here's the thing. This is actually, to be worn by Turin, son of Hurin, or Turin, Turinbad and such. And this is actually probably the saddest tale in all of the Middle-earth stories. And I kind of liked this one when I was very young and such, and it actually shows the first dragon of Middle-earth. No, not being Smaug, that would be Glaurum, the worm. But yeah, now it's this image we see here. This is always on the books, and it shows the dragon helm look like this. But if we do actual research into the books, it always says that the dragon helm was created by the dwarves of, if I remember correctly, from Belagost. Yeah, in fact, none of y'all know what I'm talking about. Here's the thing. This is from the first stage. So, yeah, read the books, kids. But, yes, from the books, we get, well, the dragon helm from the dwarves of Belagost. And the dwarves, during the first stage, were always known to actually have faceplates on their helmets. Which, for example, this is actually this image is of the Lord of Belagost, the dwarf Lord of Belagost. And they... honestly, I kind of like... Now, this is a fan-made artwork, but I kind of like it. It's pretty good. But when I think of Turin's helmet to be what it should look like, it should look like something like this. Like, pretty much with a faceplate on there. Which, I don't know why. But it just reminds me of it. In fact, here is some Dwarven helmets of the first age. And I love these. I actually do love these. These actually make me think of a dwarf whenever I think of their height. They're 4 feet and such. Now, these are fan-made, but this is definitely what I think of a dwarf helmet would look like from the first stage. And this is pretty cool. And they should have had something like this in the films with the dome shape to deflect the weapon to the side, but they don't have that. Now, others say it would look like this, an Attican-style helmet. Now, I don't know what an Attican helm is. An Attican helm has been found by the region of Attica, which has been used by the Thracians, Dacians, Athenians, anybody throughout the Mediterranean. So, yeah. But I don't know. It doesn't scream dragon helm to me. But I do know that these were also seen in the original Hobbit movie. No, I'm not the Peter Jackson one. I'm talking about the original Hobbit film when it was animated, which I still love. But I have to say, the face design, this would actually definitely be more of what the dragon helm should have looked like, at least in my opinion, and in which I'm believing that none other than J.R.R. Tolkien might have been inspired by this. Tolkien might have been inspired by this by the tales of Sutton Hoo helmets that were being discovered in England at the time. And the Sutton Hoo helmet is the best option, in which definitely looks like that, actually. It definitely reminds me of a Sutton Hoo helmet for some reason. Alright, now let's get into the dwarves. Now, when we take a look at the dwarves, there are different variations in equipment and armor. Now, we will get the Gimli, but that will be a little later in this. Let's take a look first at the dwarves of the Iron Hills. These guys holy hell, outfitted in kit, plate, and such, in which, just like the books, I love this. What I don't like is that helmet. Why? Kind of obvious. That helmet, with their height being of 4 feet tall, and I'm 6 feet, by the way, that armor, like that helmet ain't gonna work for it, especially with a downward chop to the guy's head. Now, I hear many people already saying, oh, but Templar, they could have had a crossbar. Yeah, but then it's doing so, it's going to stunt their growth even more. Because here's an example of an early Crusader helmet. These were known as a flat-top great helm. And the Crusaders hated these. They liked them because of the sharp point when it stuck out. Like when they lifted their head, there's that deflect right there. But as soon as someone hit them on top of the head with a heavy blow, they're dead. They're going to have a neck broken and such. So guess what's going to happen to the dwarf? It doesn't matter if there's a crossbar. That will still hurt like hell. But I love the fact on how the mail is and the plate armor is. This just reminds me of a pikeman from the late centuries of the medieval period, such as during the time of the 16th century. So we can actually somewhat see that, actually. I had to agree. This is pretty good. Now, let's take a look at the dwarves of Erebor. Now, mostly Thorin's company, though. Now, when we take a look at Thorin's company, they are wearing older versions of the armor before the Battle of the Five Armies. For example, if we take a look at the armor we see here, they are actually wearing what looks to be a mixture of mail and plate attached to each other. Now, if none of y'all know how this style of armor is in real life, there is armor like this in real life. Take, for example, this style of armor comes directly from the Philippines. That's right, this armor directly comes from the Philippines. However, it was also used in the areas as the Middle East. It was also used in the eastern regions of Europe. In fact, technically this style of armor is a mixture of plate and mail, which mail was attached to the plate armor and which was perfectly workable. And as well, the armor moved with the body instead of the other way around. Now when we take a look at this, if I had to compare these two, these look pretty accurate to how they would both look. Now, in doing so, though, this one is from the Philippines, but there is also variations from the Middle East, the Ural Mountains and such. In fact, this was seen through Eastern Europe, the Middle East, India, all the way to the Philippines. And it was pretty good armor for a long time. And it could stop cutting weapons and thrusting weapons, so it perfectly worked with the body. And that I need to get myself something like that, so that way I could show y'all. But, yeah. But no, I want to put this out here. Sometimes some of this stuff I kind of agree with, I don't agree with. Like, this helmet right here, I don't know what I'm looking at, but that... Oh man, it looks like it's just mail just piled up on top of something. It just looks like that. While their dome helmet should look like more like this. Now this is the artist drawing of Thorin at the gates and such. But as we can see, he's wearing a form of dome-shaped helmet with mail attached to his head, which this is what it should have looked like. Now, I like the way the Erebor armor mostly looks on every one of the characters, because the way it's an open type of system, like that of Eastern-style armor. And since Erebor is towards the Far East, it would have probably influenced that region as well. But, yeah. But let's get to the biggest armor out there, mithril. Now, mithril is just mail, but it's made by the strongest metal and the rarest metal in all of Middle-earth. Pretty much only found in two places. One, the mines of Moria, or Khazad-dûm, and the island of Numenor, which by the time of the Third Age is sunk beneath the waves. So, yeah, it's only found in the Misty Mountains then, and this is a very, very big thing. Now, maybe y'all are actually say, Templar, how do you know this? Here's the thing, I am a Tolkien fan through and through because, one, I read the books. Don't believe me? This is my father's old atlas of Middle-earth, and I don't just have this, I have other books on Middle-earth as well, even an old variation of the book, which is the encyclopedia of it, which gives all accounts of monsters and cities and such. Yeah, that's how big I am in Middle-earth, dang it. I love the books, I love the stories, because one, Tolkien got inspired by actual accounts from Beowulf, so yeah. But yeah, I am deeply into the subject of The Lord of the Rings, especially with the dwarves. Although, pretty much they're sadly not that much seen, even though they were somewhat seen at the... Even though technically they are supposed to actually be seen at the last alliance of men and elves, but apparently they don't show them for some reason. But anyways, mithril is a very rare armor, and unfortunately is very hard to come by. But a shirt of mail like this apparently is strong enough to stop certain weapons. And here's the thing. There are actually accounts of this in history books of mail stopping even a sword thrust from a rapier because of it being so tightly woven. And now many people also already are going to ask, Templar, doesn't that mean that you won't move in it? Actually, you can. It just means that the rings are so small, like itty bitty tight, and as well very greatly riveted, that it makes it impossible to thrust through. Such as one, such as by the late medieval period, for example, like say the 16th or late early 17th century, mail armor had gotten so incredibly small and dense that in doing so, it had looked as though that it was, well, not even there, and sometimes had been mistaken for clothing. And mithril is the best example of this. It's a better form of armor compared to the other one. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's like this. Compare a 9mm ring, for example, of mail, like 9mm ring mail, compared to 6 or even 5mm ring mail. In fact, there's even versions of that smaller than 5mm that are smaller. So just imagine on how good of armor that would be. Now, though, that was mostly meant for the high and wealthy, seeing the fact that, one, this would have been wealthy armor. So, yeah. Alright, now let's get to everyone's favorite dwarf, Gimli, son of Glowing. Now, I want to put this out here. I love Gimli in the film. I love Gimli in the books. What I do not like is Gimli's helmet. Now, many of y'all are going to ask, Templar, why don't you like Gimli's helmet? If you're a fan of Gimli, you gotta love this helmet. Here's the thing, I really don't like this helmet for one major reason. Now, I want to put this out here. In the books, he finds the helmet in Moria, but in the film, it's with him all the time. So, yeah. Now, maybe y'all are gonna ask, okay, Templar, why don't you like this helmet? Well, as I said before, the way this helmet looks is like that of, well, making it easy for a downward chopping motion. And it does have a dome shape to it, probably covering a steel, like the leather probably covering a steel cap, which has been done in historical times in combat. And as well, it does have a reinforcement bar on the upper part to prevent certain blows. I like this, but if somebody hits this opening of the 4 areas that are open on that area, it will be very easy to kill somebody with just the steel dome plate. Now, we can also see what looks to be like on the side, what looks to be a mixture of scales attached with mail, riveted mail. That is actually accurate to historical points and times in history to certain points, because one, we see exposure of the mail links holding onto scale plates. So I kind of had to give them added props for that, and it looks like it has cheek guards to the side. Very good, but it looks like it's a little too short, so they probably should have made it a little bit longer so that way it could have protected his neck. Because if we can see from his head, like the end of the armor, like the end of the plate, it's like leaving his neck exposed, like about, like I don't know if I can get, like about that much. And that's enough for a blow to come right to your neck. And I don't know if anything's covering his neck right there, because his hair is always in the way. So, yeah. This image here, I want to put this out here. This image of Gimli and Legolas at the Battle of Helm's Deep. Now, this is an artwork design. They did pretty good job at making this artwork design. Because this is, when I think of Gimli, this is what he should look like. We see Gimli wearing a type of historical armor that's been used in the Middle East and Eastern Europe and such. It's fully attached, like it's literally elongated mail sleeves attached with certain plates here and there. In fact, there's even plate armor on his forearms. There's a plate armor up on his shoulder. There's plate armor here on his chest. That is like to make it light and effective. In other words, the armor moves with him, just like mail would. So in doing so, the armor is perfect. As well, with the dome-shaped helmet and probably Aventail attached. Whenever I think Gimli, that's what Gimli looks like. Because whenever I think of Gimli, that's him. That's my Gimli I think of. Especially from the books, okay? I'm already pissing off a lot of people that just watch the movies, aren't I? Now let's get right to the elves. And for that, we gotta take a look at Legolas. Now, we're actually still at the same image. I want to talk about this one because Legolas in the entirety of the film, he's not wearing armor until like the Hobbit films. And when I look at this image here, it looks like it's showing him wearing some sort of sallet style helmet, which that's pretty beautiful. Though I don't know if it's a good idea for an archer to wear, seeing the fact that it's like such narrow eye vision for an elf. However, his arm protection is the Jack of Chains, which this is a certain historical style of armor used in the medieval period. And lowly foot soldiers did wear these, and they preferred it over wearing certain other armor, because one, it was lighter and still effective to protect the arms. So, pretty good. I have to say that, to the least. Now, let's get into the Noldor elves. Now, many of y'all don't know the difference between the Noldor. There's the Noldor, the Sindar, and the Teleri, and so variation of elves. So, yeah, we're going to first talk about the Noldor elves, or in this case, Rivendell. And, honestly, I'm not a fan of elf armor, but this one I think is my favorite out of them all. For the elves, anyways. And the way this armor looks, especially from the films, it overlaps each other. Now, not many of y'all are going to wonder, what do you mean by overlaps? Well, as you see in this image, the armor is overlapping itself. For example, you see one plate going this way and the other plate going that way, and it crosses itself. And it does the same thing with variation of the other plates. So in other words, it crosses the plate armor all the way up to the shoulders, making it a very good armor. Now, we also see this with the thigh, like the armor for the thighs. The only problem I see about this is that one, it leaves the stomach fully exposed. Like literally, it covers the chest, like it's like a secondary rib cage on the top, but there's nothing protecting the stomach. Which I know this will help with the movement of an elf, but not the best idea. As I said, the way this armor will work is that if I bend to the right or bend to the left, it will move with me. It won't move against me. So in other words, it makes it extremely flexible. But the problem is it might make it weak. All in all, I kind of do like that design a little. I don't know. As I said, I am not a fan of elves, but that armor pretty perfect. Now, let's get to their helmets. Does anybody get Spartan vibes whenever they see these? Because this is a Corinthian helmet, just with a big giant spike on top. Now, honestly, it's a pretty good type of helmet, but the problem is it will make it difficult to hear your commands. You can only look forward. And that's a problem on the battlefield, especially when wearing these helmets. In fact, in antiquity, these helmets were rarely worn. Now, to be fair, I do actually have a Corinthian-style helmet, but this proves my point. Because now I'm going to wear this without the padding, but as you can see, I can barely see out of a certain angle. Hell, I can only look forward. Now, here's the thing. My helmet has cutouts. This doesn't. So, that's saying something. In fact, it looks like the helmet has a full covering all the way down. So imagine this neck guard has plate-like armor all the way going, stretching down here. That means that it will be very hard to hear your commands. And even worse, it's going to make it very hard to look down. How so? Well, let me get some padding in this thing real quick. Let me see if this one will work enough. Yeah, that'll work. Well, one major example I can prove is this. One, if I look down, I can easily look down. Now, I can look down like about a couple of inches from where I originally was looking at. But if I look up, I can barely look up. So in other words, this helmet is mostly meant perfectly for turning left and right, but not up and down, which is a problem on the battlefield. Something then in which you don't want on the battlefield. So, yeah. Now, honestly though, if they actually end up getting real close, they could probably just headbutt the person, but I don't know. Honestly, I kind of give it a 5 out of 10, so yeah. Yeah, sorry any elf boys out there, so yeah. Alright, let's go to the Silvan elves. Now, if no one knows who the Silvan elves are, they are the elves of Mirkwood. So, in other words, like that of Legolas. Speaking of which, we last saw him wearing certain armor. This is the only armor we see him ever wearing. And that's in a Hobbit film. Now, I kind of like it because it's a downward scale system, but wear more armor, man. Now, I know that elves are supposed to be quick and mobile, but still, they could have had something else. Honestly, the armor of the Silvan elves is honestly not very good. It looks like it's just a breastplate with a cutouts, which I have no idea what's that for. So, but let's get to their helmets, which these I kind of like. These I kind of like. I kind of like these helmets. Because the way the helmet looks is that it has cutouts for the certain areas of the head and such. It has this cutout. Unlike with the Corinthian style helmet we saw with the Noldor, these ones are a little better for probably everything else. As we can see actors having a little more better eyesight. Now this kind of reminds me almost of a bassinet, but that's with some weird added features on top. So, kind of a good idea. I do agree with this one. I'll give it a pass, like 8 out of 10. Because, honestly, it would have worked without these. Because this helmet, I like it. It's just the weird horn feature is what's going to give it problems. Especially if a sword or whatever, like an orc would use, would get caught in it. They could easily just rip it off. And which is the last thing an elf wants. Especially with the fact that if it's strapped onto his neck and it just pulls him back. So, yeah. Okay, let's get to my least favorite of the elves, the Sindar. Now, the Sindar elves, or the elves of Lothlorien, as they're called. Now, you might be already saying, "Hey, Templar, I love them in the Battle of Helm's Deep." They were never at the Battle of Helm's Deep. Read the book. I want to put this out here. Their helmets went from looking like this type of design with a spike protruding and such to whatever the hell this is. I'm kind of wondering, why did it go, it's like, now, I like this Corinthian style like they got with the original First Age and Second Age, but somewhere in the mid-second age and the Third Age, they went from looking badass with a style of helmet to whatever fantasy knockoff this is. Because this helmet is not doing anything to protect the user. Because this is what an original Lorien helmet was supposed to look like. In fact, this is how it was supposed to look like based on the books. See something weird there? It's supposed to be a helmet with male attachment. Why did they use this weird toothpick-looking device? Because this thing doesn't look like it will protect the head at all. In fact, if we take a look at this person wearing it, I can see hair sticking out in certain areas, which means this stuff is this overlapping plate, and not in a good way. This will make it easy for a weapon to go through. 0, 0 on the helmet. See, right here. There is so much openings, it's not even funny. Definitely a big 0. Now let's get into their plate. Honestly, their plate armor is mostly supposed to be meant for archers, so they might actually be good here. Though, by the looks of it, it looks like it's like late period armor. Like Gothic, almost. Although, I can't tell, because this is a remake that's not the movie prop versions that they wore. So, yeah, it might just be some variation, but it looks like it has a somewhat style covering of leather and such. But the thigh guards are probably like that of overlapping plate to help move. So, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. I prefer the Noldor a little more, actually. Alright, now let's get to the race of men. Now, we're actually going to go with the first one being Dale and Lake Town. Now, why them? Well, because most people don't look at their armor. Let's do that for them. Now, we don't exactly get much imagery of it, so that's the sad part, but I'm going to try my best as I can. Now, let's first actually take a look at Girion armor. Now, if you know who Girion is, he's the lord of Dale. He has a front open type of mail collar, meaning the mail opens from the front. You don't just slide it on like European mail, which means he might have actually gotten this influence from the dwarves. In other words, this might have come from the dwarves of Erebor, which I'm probably believing that. So they would have probably worn something like, well, historical Eastern style armor. So something like this, maybe even. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this style of armor because, one, it is so cool looking. I don't know why. Well, let's actually take a look at none other than the helmets the Lake Town uses. I tried my best to get a good image of these, and the only closest I got was something of artistry imagery of the captains and such, and honestly, it reminds me of something in historical aspect. Later on, though, I found out that's a fur trim line for some idiot reason. And we actually see one of the characters wearing it. And this helmet, like one of the dwarves wearing it, which I kind of like. And guess what this reminds me of? Yeah, that's right. It reminds me of a Byzantine-style kettle helm, which would have been somewhere during the time of the 13th to the 14th century. And this is actually pretty accurate. Later on, though, I found out that apparently those helmets they were wearing, it was just a fur trim line rather than a brimmed helmet. But still, it would have been perfect if I had known, because this looks like a Lake Town to me. But then there is also the Men of Dale's helmet. Now, some of these are just covered with fur around the rim and such, but I kind of do like it without the fur trim line, it is. And this is what it would look like. Now, looks just like a regular Sprangen helm from the front, right? Well, if we actually take a look at a different side, this would actually be what it looks like. It looks like a bassinet. And not just any type of bassinet, a barbut bassinet. Or as it's also known as a Gallic bassinet. Now, if you don't know what Gallic bassinets are, Gallic bassinets are a very, very little talked about armor and equipment in history. Because, one, most people, when they think of bassinet, they automatically think, oh, 100 Years' War, this here, this there. We don't want to care about Scotland and Ireland. Yeah, that's right. The Gallic bassinet is from Scotland and Ireland. And this style of helmet is really cool. I want to put this out here. These helmets are really cool. In fact, we'll even talk about this with Gondor very soon. These have different variations. They have, majority of times, a different design, but with them, they are pretty perfect at stopping certain weapons. And honestly, this just reminds me of the barboot bassinets that the Celts wore, or Scots and Irish wore, and these were also, as I said, these are called Gallic bassinets. Gallic bassinets are very rarely talked about. I'm looking to get one myself. It's just very weird talking about these, because one, these are very rare to find. Sometimes it actually looked like a mix of a barboot and a bassinet. In other words, it had the design look of a bassinet, like when it came to going upward, but the facial detail was more barboot. In other words, imagine a bassinet and a barboot had a baby. It would have the upper sticking of a bassinet, like you would see most bassinet helmets have, but the facial guard would mostly be that of covering the said helmet areas here. Sometimes they were actually even so small that it had very narrow eye vision. In fact, let me get an example real quick. Alright, here's my example. As you can see, this is definitely somewhat base. This is pretty much what I'm trying to explain. This is like a barboot style design. In other words, barboot, bassinet protruding. That's how these helmets were designed. And by far pretty cool if you ask me. But yeah, it's kind of weird that I'm kind of happy they did put this in the film, even though they didn't actually put them in the film. They only showed them like 1 second out of every time, which is kind of sad. Although this was originally supposed to be worn by Bard, but apparently they didn't have him wear it. I don't know why. Why? I literally have tried to look this one up, but apparently they don't know why he didn't wear it. I think he might have been late for the acting role, I guess. I don't know. But this is what the men of Dale would have looked like. And especially the Battle of Five Armies. This is pretty accurate. But why didn't they wear it? I don't know. Alright, let's go to the Easterlings. Now, when we think of the Easterlings, this one's actually a weird one, to say the least. I actually don't like their armor in the movie. I hear maybe already saying, oh, but Dumbledore, they're so cool! One being this helmet. This, oh man, I can't explain how bad this helmet is. This is, I know it's supposed to be, like, terrifying, but it doesn't look terrifying. This looks stupid to me. Because the way this helmet looks is that it will be a hindrance on the battlefield. How so? Well, for one major example, this style of helmet, those winged flaps are up in the air. This makes it easy for, say, for example, if I had an axe, I can easily hook it around parts of that metal piece that are sticking up, and I can easily drag him down, only to finish him off. As well, this helmet, I can see it somewhat deflecting, but only in certain, because in this artwork, it shows it a little more dome-shaped, but based on the movie like this, no. There's literally no way I could see this working, especially with that front hook in the front. Now, I could see the front hook actually probably helping out for a certain frontal phase, but anything else, you're probably going to be toast. As also, what the hell is with the armor? I looked at that here. It looks like he's wearing scale armor, only backwards. It's facing upward, not downward like it should. Meaning it makes it very easy to thrust downward into their unprotected body, which is the one easiest thing to do. Because That's the only way you could pretty much defeat scale armor is a downward blow. Now, here is actually an artwork image of someone who actually loved them, and I actually kind of like this. Now, I think what the Easterlings were based off of was the Eastern European cultures of the Rus, or as well nomadic warriors from the Far East, like the Mongols and such, which whenever I think of Easterlings, I think of the Mongols and such, or something like them, because here is another example of that. Now, this is actually an artwork design on the Easterlings, if they were historically accurate, and somebody actually did this. Which, kudos, by the way, this is pretty good. Now, whenever I think of the Easterlings, I think of the Cumans, like from Kingdom Come Deliverance. And I don't know why, that is more terrifying than an Easterling armor. So, yeah. But we can see that one, it's a laminar, like the scale is supposed to be laminar plate, and they're supposed to be based off of that of Eastern riders of the Horse Lords area, but they did not do them very good in the justice of the film. So, very low, like 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10. I'm sorry for any guys that are fans of them, but no. Fan artwork? Yes. Movie? No. Alright, now let's go to people's favorite, Gondor. Now, I thought about this one for quite a while with Gondor, because Gondor is kind of my favorite, but not as favorite as Rohan. Now, I thought, where should I first start? Well, we should first start with the Númenóreans, and this armor kind of is the best way to explain it, though they have different variation on their equipment and armor. Though whenever I think of a Gondorian, my brain automatically thinks Byzantine for some reason. I don't know why. It literally thinks Byzantines, of all things. But yeah, Númenórean style armor would have looked like this during the late Second Age and such. And which by the time, but however in the movie, it's a lot different compared to how it would have been. So, yeah. Now, let's actually take a look at the First Age, mainly starting with the First Age armor, or Second Age armor, my bad. Their helmets for the foot soldiers were stupidly idiotic. Now, many of y'all are going to say, oh, but do I like that? I like the Battle of the Last Alliance. Yeah, well, their helmets weren't exactly the best, now were they? Because one, the design of this helmet would make it problematic, especially with the upward features of those wings. Given to the fact, this makes it a lot easier for a downward chopping weapon, so not the best, not the best. We can see this why they changed it in the Third Age. So, yeah. Of which, let me then go to the King's helmet, King's and Lord helmet of the Second Age, so that way I can give my proper example for that. Which, these ones are a little better. These ones are actually a little better, because the way they are designed is for help at a downward chop. Now, the King's helmet, it's to show off, hey, look, I'm here on your side. The Prince's helmet, hey, it's also to show, hey, I'm fighting alongside you. Because in medieval history, that's what noblemen did. They fought with their men, and they wanted their men to rally around them on the battlefield. It's like, hey, I'm right here. So, I kind of like that. That's good. I like those too. But I hate the foot soldier helmets. Those were not good. Now let's go into the fact that one of these... But speaking of helmets, let's go to the actual helmets themselves. Now, if y'all remember when I talked about the Gallic bassinet, what do the Gondorian helmets look like? That's right, they look like a Gallic bassinet. Now, I want to put this out here. This is a nobleman-style Gallic bassinet, which this would have been of the late century, but like 16th century and such, but it would still be perfectly accurate to the historical points on how to explain of what this could have been looking like. Because one, I'm as I said, I'm still trying to get myself a Gallic bassinet. But imagine this helmet, but without the nasal guard and without the cheek guards. That is what a Gallic bassinet is. It is this elongated design, and they did a pretty good job at taking that historical point from history. Now, the way that actually is, we can see that it helps with their neck. Their neck is slightly exposed, but that does help with their movement of the head to upward and downward movement, especially side to side. As well, the only problem is they can't hear jack, and this will make a problem in the long run, but because of that protruding area along their helmet, it helps with a downward deflection, which is perfect for combat use, especially against an orc, which will pretty much mostly do this. But I kind of like that a lot. I do really do. But then there are also these other helmets. Now, these I like, especially the one on the middle, on the bottom. It looks like a nasal helm. It looks like that of, well, mail and nasal helm design, which I like, and that I just love that design. And it has an upper protrusion. This type of design is only seen in one area, and that is the Gallic style nasal helm. Now, if you know the difference between Gallic style nasal helms and other nasal helms, well, here is an example. This is a helmet based off of the Orkney Islands style nasal helm, and it's actually been stated that these would have a protrusion upward design to deflect certain blows, comparing that to other helmets. Now we can see the differences. There is very limited, but there's very little difference, but it's still an example of how that would have been. Especially when I put this on. We see the upper design, keeping it to deflect to the side. That's how it was. I kind of like the fact that they put that in there, but as I said, these had to be redesigned and such, but they never put them in the film, sadly. I'm kind of sad, though. Now, with the armor that we see the Gondorians wearing in the entirety of the film, now during the Second Age, they were mostly wearing mail with very little plate, but during the Third Age, we see a lot of them all wearing plate armor. Cuirasses, 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 over and over again. I mean, somebody get these guys a brigandine, for crying out loud. It's not that hard. Because one, I would have loved to seen brigandine being worn by these guys. In fact, here is a fan-made artwork of what it could have looked like with them wearing a brigandine. I kind of like this, especially with the Gondorian style helmet. That would have been perfect. But no, they didn't do that. As well, we could have also seen foot soldiers that look like this, that just wear mail and the Gondorian helmet, but no, they didn't do that either. I'm kind of saddened why they didn't. But here is another full example. One's wearing a full brigandine to the far left. This is actually pretty cool. I really wish they did something like this in the film a little more. But no, I know they had a budget. I understand, but it's kind of disappointing, really. I think it's just too much plate armor. Like, literally. Now, take a look at this image right here. What do we see in this image? Nothing but plate armor being worn. Like, literally, every one of the guys are wearing plate armor except for wearing, like, anything else. Like, literally, I don't see any gambeson. I don't see any brigandine. I don't see any plate armor. There is literally nothing like that. It's kind of weird. I'm not going to lie. That's kind of weird. But yeah, let's actually talk about Boromir's armor when he's fighting for Gondor. He is actually wearing what looks to be full plate armor, which pretty accurate and historically accurate, and as well elongated mail down to his knee, down to his ankles. Now, many people are going to say, "Oh, Temple, this is fake." Actually, there have been historical accounts of something like this in history, especially from regions like Scotland and Ireland, of Scottish noblemen wearing elongated mail all the way down to their ankles, especially during the time of many conflicts in history. In fact, the mail would have been carried out through and through over the centuries from father to son, and they would have added it, especially if it came down to a nobleman. And in doing so, the nobleman might have added on and on, especially when they were in cavalry. So, yeah, this might have been perfect for wearing, especially when you're on horseback. So, yeah. In fact, even the Byzantines noted on a certain group of Varangians known as the Celto-Varangian Guard, who and which were stated to have worn nothing but mail, but with demonic-looking helmets that looked as though they shot fire from their eyes. Now, unfortunately, now we all know that one's probably fake, but kind of scary to think about it. And the majority of the time, they would wear elongated sleeves of mail that even reached down to their below their knees, covering their shins and such. And in doing so, they were said to have rode into battle, but as soon as the battle had commenced, they charged in with ferocity, which kind of awesome. I need to do more research on that to do a Varangian Guard like that very soon. So, yeah. Remind me next time. But yeah, if we also take a look at Aragorn with his ranger equipment, he wears no mail or any armor when he's a ranger. He doesn't even have a buckler shield, which is very dangerous, and he only starts to gain armor and equipment over each movie. Like during the first one, he gets Boromir's gauntlets, and then in the second one for the Battle of Helm's Deep, he then puts on a mail shirt with a jerkin overlapping. This, as I said, is historical, so I'm gonna leave it there with that one. So yeah, because honestly, that kind of looks cool on him. I'm not wrong. I'm not gonna lie. That kind of looks cool on him. But all in all, I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts on the Gondorian armor and what would y'all think of it. Because whenever I think of it, I think it screams Byzantine to me, or something. I don't know. All right, now let's talk about the masters of the Numukil. The Haradrim. Now, when we think of the Haradrim, there is little armor on them. However, whenever we see them, they are wearing this woven armor of sorts, and covered in a turban type form, and mostly being of archers on top of Numukil. Now, when we actually do accounts and history from this, it's actually stated that J.R.R. Tolkien was actually inspired by actual historical equipment that was actually documented by the British regimental government in the Middle East. And one account actually stated that there were noblemen that actually fought against other noblemen in the Arabian plains wearing mails and turbans, and as well very light equipment. So maybe this might have been inspired by that of Arabic style warfare, of which, take this image here and compare it to this guy here. This looks very accurate. So based off of the Arabs, I have to agree. All in all, I give it 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. I had to go there. Though, I would have gone 10 out of 10 if they were wearing mail and it looked more like this guy here. I don't know why. I just, when it comes to me, I'm always history. I'm a history buff. I like history. It has to look historically accurate. So yeah. Alright, let's get to one of my favorite of the race of men, the Rohirrim. Now, when we talk about the Rohirrim, this one is a big one I had to put out too. There is several equipments I have to look at, but most of the time when it comes to their helmets, it's all based on Viking or Saxon style helmets, and that's what I like. In fact, here is an example of Rohirrim light helmets made in Gondor. Apparently these were made by Gondor and such, and these kind of do have a good example to them. I kind of have to agree. Then there is also the effect on these styles of helmets we see of the regular foot soldier helmets and such, or the regular rider helmets and such, compared to them. And most of these also look like they might have been of late Roman style helmets, which all in all, in historical points, actually are accurate to historical points in history, because even some late medieval, early medieval Sprangen helms like this were inspired by, well, Roman-style helmets. So, yeah, by the later periods, they would have evolved over time to even have the optical helmet that covers pretty much, well, an optical style illusion type helmet. Somewhat like this. So, yeah. But Theoden's helmet sticks out like a sore thumb for one reason. He is the king. He is meant to stick out. So, I like that a lot. Now, when we take a look at most of their armor, though, it's mostly of some form of scale or... Yeah, I want to say scale. I want to say scale and mail that protrudes elongated down to the thigh. Because, one, these guys are mostly horse lords. In fact, in this image here, we see that it protruding even farther below the knee. Which means that, one, this is meant for a guy who's riding. Now, I like the scale, and then there's Theoden's armor, which he's wearing scale below his, like, underneath his heavier plate armor, which this I kind of do like. Although, I'm guessing over the years it might have been eroded a plate or something like that. I don't know if it's plate armor on this or leather, but I'm going to go with plate. I'm going to go with calling it plate because that's what it looks like, what it's supposed to be inspired by, just with a leather covering. And all in all, they did a pretty good job of doing it. All in all, I got to give the Rohirrim a 10 out of 10. Yeah, I know, I hear maybe people saying, oh, Double, you're just favoring them a little more. Well, yeah, because they're one of my favorite guys, and one, they actually look a little more historically accurate. So, yeah.
Ash naz du bataluk, ash naz gim batul, ash naz trakataluk, abuzum ishi krim patul.
Alright, guys. Now we got to the time of Mordor, or the Dark Lord and his forces. Now we're first going to cover the Dark Lord, the Ringwraiths, and as well the Malfassaran with this first one. Now, let's take a look at the Lord of the Nazgul, or the Ringwraiths, and which is supposed to be the Witch King of Angmar. Now this is not a helmet, this is a crown apparently, but if we all know from the books, apparently he's supposed to be a guy, a figure with a crown upon his invisible head. That's about it. There's no face covering whatsoever, but okay, I'll let it slide. Now, this style of helmet, honestly, seeing it in public, I would be scared, especially if I'm facing off against a Nazgul. Now, in doing so, though, it would be problematic, but if he headbutts me with that thing, it won't be problematic anymore. Because I was about to say that one, because of those spikes protruding, it will be easy for me to get my weapon on there, but we can all know that not by the hand of man will he fall. But, for historical purposes, I don't know. I don't know. No. I can't like it, but I like it. But whenever I take a look at the Dark Lord's armor, or the dark, like anything from Mordor or the Dark Lord's inspiration from, I think of Gothic armor. In fact, take a look at the Witch King with like this. He's wearing Gothic armor, dang it. Now maybe y'all are saying, oh, but this ain't Gothic armor. Really? The Witch King's gauntlets aren't Gothic look? Compare these to Gothic gauntlets. They look exactly the same. In fact, I think that's actually what, because honestly, whenever I think of Gothic armor, I think it's otherworldly, and I'm not a fan of it most of the time and such, but honestly, it definitely looks demonic, if you ask me, if you put it in in the form of the Dark Lord's hands. Now, though, the Malfassaran, get that guy some eye holes. I don't know how the hell he could see in in the entirety of the film. Because, one, he had to have somebody walk him over to wherever the hell he was. Now, unfortunately, though, this had to be in the extended scene. They didn't show it in the regular scene, so yeah. But that, I know it's not meant for battle, but still, it's so stupid. Even if you're just a mouth, you gotta see where the hell you're going. It won't work on the battlefield, no. The Dark Lord's armor, we already know what his bottom armor looked like. It looks pretty much nearly identical to the Witch King's armor almost. But let's go to his helmet. Now apparently the horns upon this helmet are supposed to be his crown and such, but there's little information on the book that speaks about a crown like this big, let alone a helmet. All we do know is he gave up his fair form and for a more demonic design, in which, honestly, this doesn't look demonic enough compared to some artwork I have seen on the Dark Lord, and which kind of scares me, actually. Because, one, I'm just going to put this one here to explain my point. Yeah, let that be in your nightmares. But, yeah. The Dark Lord's helmet, pretty badass looking. Problem is, because that vision's like about this much, he's not going to be able to see very good. He's not going to be able to hear. He's probably going to be able to breathe with that big giant nasal holes there, apparently, but all in all, I wouldn't say this is a good helmet. Even though he's technically an OP character that is hard to kill. Now, let's talk about the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. Now, Orcs of the Misty Mountains, I'm going to put this also with Gundabad Orcs as well. They are something. I'm just going to get this one out of here. What the hell is with Bolg? Why is there armor protruding from his chest? What are those pauldrons attached to? His muscles? Oh, that is just the most ugly. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter if that armor deflects certain weapons from cutting. Here's the thing. If that stuff is embedded in his skin, guess where it's going to end up going? If he gets hit by something. So, that's all I need to say about that one. But as well, if we take a look at this guy, this rider, apparently he's wearing like elongated plate, which is good, but when we look at his shoulders, it is stupid. I'm saying that. It's stupid. Look, there's no reason for that idiot protruding plate. The arm protection, perfect. They should have stuck with that one and made it crude looking, rather than attaching horns or whatever to that. That is so ugly. Now, with Azog the Defiler, this guy, you hate him or you like him. I like his armor. I have to say I do like his demonic gothic armor. That's all I'm gonna say. Pretty perfect. It moves with the body. In fact, let me get an example real quick. Okay, now what do I mean by moves with the body? It's like this. That's what I mean by moves with the body. That's the way this plate armor will work. That's why it's overlapping one another with this plate here. So, pretty perfect on that one. I'll give him kudos on that one. Yeah, that's a good one. I had to give him on that. It's good. But now let's take a look at one of the Moria orcs, for example. They also wear them, but now this is one from Gundabad. But apparently the Moria orcs is wearing the same thing. So yeah. Now I kind of like this and hate it. Reason one, the way that the armor is and that helmet is, this looks like a crude version of a sallet. You don't know what a sallet is? This is a sallet. Let me put some padding in there real quick. Because the sallet helm like this, or in which later on medieval periods and such, now there are different variations on how this sallet should look, but this, like, early artwork of this always protrudes like a sallet style helmet. Reason to example. Open face, and as well, a lot of times there are different variations and designs of the sallet helm, but this is definitely a sallet. It's just got a facial guard like this. Yeah, it definitely probably look like an orc now. Except this eyesight slit is probably, except for probably one thing, this guard piece is probably a little more upward. So, yeah. But we could definitely say, I kind of like that. I kind of do like that. This centurion helmet apparently being worn by one of the Gundabad orcs is good, but I'm thinking it's probably back from the Second Age. But yeah, it's, I don't know. Then there are other variation of their helmets which look cool, but probably aren't that good at all. Because if we take a look at the Battle of the Five Armies, they're wearing various styles. I kind of like that, but I wish they would wear just crude versions of the sallet, which we will soon talk about a little more very soon. But yeah, Gundabad orcs, kind of down there. Now let's talk about the orcs of Mordor. Now, this image here is what I'm talking about when it comes down to the sallet being crude. In fact, there are horns protruding. In fact, from the original animated film of The Return of the King, you see orcs wearing sallet-style helmets and the red eye protruding. That's what every time I think about when it comes to an orc. He's wearing a form or crude version of the sallet style helmet. And this is a good example of it. Now, I'm going to put this out here because take a look at this image here. What do we see? We see two guys wearing, like right behind this guy, wearing sallets that are crudely fashioned. And in fact, in the Battle of Minas Tirith, we also see some variations that even just have these big, wide openings of a sallet, fully closed, but with big openings for the eyes. They actually mostly put sallets in there that are crudely fashioned. In fact, Tolkien even described that the armor of the orcs was crudely fashioned, but easily made. And we have to think, and remember, Tolkien was in World War I, fighting against the Germans, who wore, wait for it, the sallet. Only a redesigned version. However, those helmets weren't exactly simple to make compared to a kettle helm. But all in all, they really do have a lot of sallets in these helmets. Like helmets, sallet looking designs. As well, they also wear gothic looking armor, which is, as I said, something I like. In fact, a lot of the scenes we see here are a lot of sallet style helmets. I'm trying to focus that as much as I could on there, so yeah, I apologize ahead of time. But yeah, don't believe me? Rewatch the films and you'll see that they are sallets. However, here's another helmet that is worn, I believe, by Samwise, if I remember correctly. It has a downward sloping, which this can actually stop a blow to the face. Pretty perfect. So, yeah, it's definitely a sallet, only with a form of Viking attire on it. I have to give that a pass. I had to give it a pass, even though it was crudely fashioned by orcs. But other equipment they would have worn and such, there's multiple stuff, I have to say the least. Let's take a look, though, at Samwise and Frodo's armor and when they're in Mordor. Let's take a first look at Frodo. Both of them are wearing scale armor. However, Frodo's is different. He is wearing scaled, like square scales, compared to Samwise, who is wearing regular scale. And now many of y'all are going to ask, Templar, what's the difference? Well, this actually protrudes to the point of how far in distance they are in history. Because one, square scale armor has actually been seen in Eastern European armor, and as well in parts of the Byzantine court. While the scale armor that Samwise wears is more accustomed to that of, I want to say, mostly of Western European design, but pretty accurate still, kind of like that of Roman style, Ludicus Guimata. I think I pronounced that correct. I don't know if I'm wrong, so yeah. But all in all, Mordor armor, pretty crudely fashioned, but still cool in my eyes, especially with the helmets. Except for one weirdo. I'm not gonna ask. Alright, now let's get to everyone's favorite and my greatest and favorite of every orc, the Uruk-hai. Now, when we think on the Uruk-hai, well, this is a tough one, I had to say the least. And doing their armor and equipment, they wear various styles of plate and such. Now, the books, they show them wearing what looks to be Viking helmets with some sort of mail covering and such. Other accounts state it's this, also with like a Roman style look, like a centurion. But, yeah. Which, let's first take a look at their helmets. That covering the centurion style. Pretty perfect, actually. This thing is actually it's supposed to show off, hey, I'm right here, follow me in the combat. And the way it's designed is horrifying to say the least. Especially the fact that one, it has those eye hole openings that actually make it impossible to, well, you have only two eye hole openings. The eyes or the mouth. And most of the time I wouldn't want to go for the mouth. Now, then there's the Berserker helmet. Now, this is only in the film. You don't hear about this in the book. This looks like a sallet, only a lot more demonic. The way it, in fact, we know Berserkers in Berserker Uruk-hai, they wear no armor except for the helmet. And there's a reason why. Apparently there's blood on the inside that drips down, going them into a Berserker frenzy. And I have to say this actually would work, because the way it's designed, but a downward chop would definitely kill the guy. That is, if you have enough time to, well, get away from him, that is. Now, though, now here's another thing I also want to put out here. There are different variations on the Uruk-hai helmets. There's the pikeman, the berserker, and the swordsman. The pikemen are like this, or type of design, and the swordsmen are this type of design. This one is mostly used by the Uruk-hai swordsman. Reason being, the protruding spikes. In other words, if he grabs you, guess where those spikes are gonna go? And the way this is designed, it has the perfect slit opening to make it perfect for you to fight. Yet, in doing so, keeps you, well, protected. And a downward slope. And the way that is designed, I kind of like this. I actually do like this, because one, it helps with a downward sloping motion. In other words, even if it comes to a downward blow, it's going to slide off still, because of that upper brim. So, even if you try to hit him in the back of the head, guess what? That brim's there to prevent that. So, I kind of like that. I don't, this is why I like Uruk-hais. But yeah, the only difference between it and the pikemen is that the pikemen don't have the spikes and have a more slanted eyesight, which means it's going to be more meant for pikemen to be using. In other words, it's going to be very hard to get an arrow through that eye slit. Then there are also the miners, or in this case, the guys that hold the explosive mindset. theirs looks like a Mordian helmet mixed in with a sallet, I would have to say. So, pretty accurate to historical points to deflect certain weapons from above. So, I'll give them that. Now, for the armor, Uruk-hai are outfitted for frontal combat use only, meaning they got no backplate. And a lot of times in medieval history, this was common, especially on the battlefield. Most foot soldiers could barely afford, well, fully decked out armor, and they would just have the breastplate. So, imagine me wearing this, and there's no backplate. So many of y'all are going to say, oh, but Templar, then that means you're more meant for the frontal use of combat zones. Exactly. In fact, during the 16th and 17th century, many foot soldiers were just wearing breastplates and not cuirasses. Now, Timor, I hear many people already asking, Timor, what's the difference? One, cuirasses are both a front and back plate. Breastplates are just a breastplate. That's it. So yeah, if these guys are foot soldiers and they're charging at you, I still would take that as a type of way of saying, hey, look, dummy, you gotta get out of the way because they're gonna charge at you. But this is why the Uruk-hais are kind of my favorite, because one, they are literally badass. Now, let's actually take a look at the Uruk-hai swordsman gauntlet. This is demonic in its form, because this is supposed to be where he's holding his machete or his scimitar, and he has two protruding spikes, and that thing goes all the way up to his elbow. Guess what he can do? This is an added form of protection. I like that. That is pretty cool. I'll give it a pass. Then there is the Uruk-hai pikeman's gauntlet, which is I don't even know how to explain this one, but apparently it's a fully enclosed gauntlet. In other words, you can't open it. It stays closed. And it's meant for you to hold the pike. In other words, it's your frontal pike. It's your front hand's pike arm. In which I see that this is more meant for a left-handed use. So in other words, where my left hand would go, it's up in the front. And that is fully protecting, and it becomes enclosed and becomes like a spiked ball. I kind of would see that working, actually. And since he's a pikeman, you don't need to worry about cavalry coming at you. But as soon as infantry gets close, that you might need to go with that form of armor. It's both to deflect and then to draw your machete. So it's pretty much both a shield and armor in one. I like this. I kind of do. I really do. I like that a lot. All in all, I have to say that this equipment and armor from history are as best accurate as I could give it to what they were actually to be called. Now, I'd like to hear y'all's, what you believe is which is better armor, which is the better equipment, and all that. I'd like to hear y'all's examples on why. But anyways, guys, like and subscribe for more. If y'all have any ideas for another Fantasy Friday video, please let me know in the comments below. But before anyone thinks I should actually start dressing up in Dwarven armor and all that, here's the thing. I'm not going to try and look for all that equipment. It is not easy to find. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, like and subscribe for more, and hopefully see y'all in the next one. And as well, y'all, please, just read the books before you watch the film. Please. Please. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Rings of Power. You are not Lord of the Rings. But anyways, guys, hope to see y'all in the next one. Like and subscribe for more, and have a great day, y'all, and a happy Fantasy Friday.